Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast. I am your host, Angela Gennari, and today we are speaking with Inbal Claudio. Thank you for joining us, Inbal.
Thank you so much for having me, Angela.
I am excited to talk to you because you have a lot of interesting things to say, and especially as a CEO mom. And I think we are, we are very aligned in that. I want to make a quick introduction for you. Inbal Claudio was born in Israel, and aside from a 4-year stint in North Carolina, has spent the majority of her life in Southern California, where she currently lives with her husband and 2 little daughters. As a candle maker turned tech founder, her passion for networking with women entrepreneurs has led her to create Like-Minded Collective, social media platform for female founders. Her mission is to make sure every single female founder, no matter what stage of business they're in, know that they matter. I love that. That's so awesome.
Yeah,
so how did you get started on this path? I'd love to know what made you take this first step.
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to the candle maker part.
Yeah.
I started my candle business I have my 5-year anniversary in 2 weeks. Exactly.
Congratulations. That's a big deal. That's awesome.
It is. Thank you. 5 years ago. And it was kind of just something that my husband and I were like, let's kind of just start something that we can just make a little bit of extra money. We were not married at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the Marine Corps and he was going to be gone a lot for training. So I was like, this is perfect. I have a full-time job. This is going to take up all my extra time. I won't have time to miss you.
Yeah.
And so when he left for selection, it was 6 weeks. I launched basically the day he left, and
Wow.
it was perfect timing.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, I launched, and then 3 months later, we found out we were moving to North Carolina. So I built this candle business in California where I had so many connections. I was a part of so many different gyms, and through my restaurant industry, I had a lot of people interested in the candles. And then I had to rebuild completely.
Wow. Yeah.
In North Carolina. It was awesome though, because I signed up for shows. I got to take 3 days in Raleigh. I went to Charlotte to do shows. I had farmers markets, and it was all amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got pregnant and I realized, okay, well, once I have this baby, I have to shift. I cannot do in-person shows, right? I mean, this is not, it doesn't work. And so everybody was, this whole influencer marketing thing was starting up, and I shouldn't say starting up, I should say getting more popular.
Right.
And I was reaching out to people, asking them, if I can send them candles, and they were like, sure, it's going to be $5,000. And that was
wow.
Yeah. And, I mean, I was so out of my league. I was messaging the Bachelorette girls.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea.
Right.
I had no idea. So, and that's if somebody messaged me back. And sometimes I would have to email their PR team. And I just quickly realized okay, I need to find a different way to do this. And I found influencer marketing platforms. And from what I understood at the time, you can sign up as a brand. There's influencers on there. You can search, you can message, you can connect. And so after kind of scoping this out, I realized it was $300 to $500 a month to join these platforms, which was so out of my budget as a small business. And that's kind of where the idea for my company started. Is I wanted to create a platform essentially for small businesses and influencers who were just starting out, a place to connect and build where they felt like they mattered. Although they were small and they had small budgets, they were still important people.
That's so awesome. What
a
great niche that is, because you're dealing with people who are just trying to get their foot in the door on the influencer side, and then connecting them with small businesses who also are just trying to get their foot in the door, and they can grow together. So I love that.
Yeah, thank you. It was just my whole goal was to make it affordable. There
Mhm.
was such a huge problem. It was like the chicken and the egg problem, where there were small brands who wanted to connect with influencers, but they didn't have enough money to pay these influencers. And then
Yeah.
there were these influencers who didn't have enough following that brands wanted to work with them. So
Yeah.
how are you supposed to build your business and your following if you can't get collaboration? So if a small influencer finds a small business, they can start to collaborate, they can start to create content. And that's kind of how the platform idea came about. It's shifted since then a ton, but that was
Yeah.
essentially the main idea.
That is fantastic. And I love the fact that you did this all because of one business that you started. The other business became a default business, right? Like, in order to make this business work, I need to make this business work. And I love that story. I think that's amazing.
Thank
And
you.
so as a, military spouse, you're talking about moving around and the stability issue. That's a big issue with, I think, a lot of military spouses, is that you don't know where you're going to end up, and so having a business that can move with you is really important. And like you were saying, you had your base, you had your potential client base right there in Southern California, and then all of a sudden you have to recreate it. So I love that you were able to pivot and you were able to do it in a way that not only made your first business survive, but thrive, because now you have a whole secondary business that came out of that. So
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you. It's a great way to make friends too.
Yes. Yeah, for
Because you're like
sure.
going to all these retail stores, talking to them about your business. You have farmers markets. You're making friends with the people on the booth to your left and your right.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. Like I had this girl come and buy candles from me at a farmer's market, and she to this day still buys candles from me. And this was like,
Wow.
she was one of my first customers in North Carolina. And she's a photographer. She is a mom of two. She took my brand photos when I was there. We still keep in touch now that I'm back in California. And it's a great way to make friends. So that's kind of
Absolutely.
how I looked at it, instead of like, oh God, I have to rebuild. It's
Right.
like, maybe I should utilize this to kind of benefit me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. What a great idea. I love that. So as a mom, you've got a husband on deployment. I assume you guys are moving around. What was that like, trying to run a business, did you have kids at the time or not yet?
So I had a 6-month-old when my husband deployed.
Okay.
And we were in North Carolina. My idea for Like-Minded Collective started when my daughter was 3 months old. So
Wow.
when she was 6 months and my husband deployed, me and her moved to my parents' house. And so it wasn't just me and her. It was like my whole candle business moved into their dining room. And it was March of 2020. So COVID hit. So we were all
Wow.
kind of like, yeah, he deployed, I think February 26th or something. I got to California.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But it worked in my favor because
Uh-huh.
everybody was working from home. People were connecting. Everybody was on Zoom. So for me,
Yeah.
as a mom of a 6-month-old, needing to kind of build this tech platform, I was meeting people on Zoom. I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is
Yeah.
working for me. I don't have to like drive to people's offices. So
Yeah.
it was awesome. But yes, he deployed for 6 months. And because of COVID, it was like, was he going to stay longer? Was he not? But I'm so fortunate that I was able to move back into my parents' house.
Yeah, for
that
sure.
time. That was
Well,
very-
it feels like the stars align for you, because everything has worked out so far as a result of what you thought was going to be a challenge has become really a blessing. Because I just feel like every time you take a step and you're like, well, gosh, that's really an inconvenience, or that's really going to be, hard to overcome. You have not only overcome it, you've kind of leapt over it. And so that's been amazing. I love the story. So tell me, as you're doing this whole, you've got an infant at home, you've got 2 businesses now that you're running, you're trying to launch a tech platform. What was it like to launch a tech platform? Because I think a lot of people are curious about that. We all have these ideas of like, what this app be great. Do you have a technology background?
I don't.
Yeah.
But my dad is a software engineer by trade. He's retired. He tried to get me to take coding classes in college, and I am kicking myself for not doing that. I remember he would tell me, like, it's so fun. Like, I love math. I'm such a math nerd. He's like, it's so fun. You're solving problems. I'm like, I can't picture myself being in front of a computer all day. Like, that's what I told him. And now that's what I do. Right. So it's so funny, but I wish I took his advice. So listen to your brain.
Right.
But so he's a software engineer. So when I came to him with the idea, he had no idea about like influencer marketing. He had no idea, but in his eyes, he was like, wow, it sounds like a great idea. So because I was living in his house, he was like right there all the time. It was awesome because he was able to kind of advise me a little bit. Mm-hmm. He was on phone calls with me with developers and different companies that quoted me between like $5,000 and $100,000.
Oh my gosh.
Platform. It was crazy. And it just shows, you know, your vision of what you're trying to build and how you verbalize it makes such a huge difference, because you could say one thing and mean one thing, but the way you say it, somebody can interpret it differently. So, you know, especially when you're trying to get quotes from software developers, you have to be incredibly specific. Right. And so I ended up finding a developer, and I went on the very low end. That was a mistake that I learned, but it was a learning process. And my dad was not, proficient in the language that it was written in. So he was kind of just like helping me here and there. And it turns out that the developer outsourced it to this guy in India, and it was just a horrible experience. There was a language barrier. I was basically checking grammar and punctuation when I was like, this is crazy.
If you're going to outsource, at least do the, management of it. Wow.
Exactly. Right. And so I'm paying them to manage it. And that's kind of what I was hoping. And because the communication was like 3 parts out, and with the time difference, if I was emailing something, I wasn't getting a response for at least 24 to 36 hours.
Wow.
So it was super, super frustrating. And according to my dad, he was like, this is not an expensive, platform that should be built with the functionality that you want. And you can do it in like 3 months. So here I am like, oh yeah, my husband's gone for 6 months. By the time he comes back, I'm going to have a platform that's launched already.
Right.
Like, that was my goal.
Right.
Little did I know it'd take an extra year and a half.
Wow.
But essentially, you have to learn and you have to make mistakes. That's just business.
It is.
I'm lucky that it wasn't $100,000 mistake, but I ended up, I think I let go of that developer, like after my husband even came back and we got back to North Carolina. I ended up parting ways with him and, finding somebody else. It took me like 3 months to find somebody else. I told him about my issue with outsourcing, and he was like, no problem. I'm not good at this language, but I will manage it. It's not difficult to kind of get it to the finish line for you. So he found somebody in the US, and that person outsourced it without him knowing.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I told him, I'm like, Tim, I swear it's being outsourced. Like, I know I'm a professional at this by now.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like just the launch delays just kept happening. And at this point, I found out I was pregnant with baby number 2. So not only am I dealing with this, I have my hormones, my emotions just all over the place.
Yes.
So essentially he found a developer. They got it like 99% of the way, but I knew that I didn't want to continue with them. I wanted to find a developer because I was a professional essentially at this point with like, verbiage and what I wanted and kind of how to explain the process and the functionality and all that came with the development aspect. I knew I just wanted to work with a developer, straightforward.
Yeah.
So I went on Upwork, and I actually, after interviewing a few people, found my developer, and he's still with me today. And he's like, he gets on Zooms with me. He does things for me like 5 seconds. He's like, Inbal, just let me know what you need. I got this for you. And if I hadn't gone through them, I wouldn't have found my developer now, who's incredible. He's in the US. He's amazing. He's like an expert. But kind of like before what you were saying, I was supposed to launch August, and I ended up launching almost a year and a half later.
Wow.
But it worked out for the best, because I would have launched before my second baby came. I'm so much more busy now than I was before. And so everything works out,
right?
Whether you want it to in that sense, like at the moment. But it was, building a tech platform with no experience it's not easy. There's lots of, I don't want to call them failures, but lots of lessons to be learned. And it's usually the hard way, unless you find an amazing developer right off the bat.
Right. And that's hard to do. You don't know who to trust. You don't know the language to speak. You don't know what you don't know. And I always say this in business. I'm like, be very careful when you start going down a new path. You don't know what you don't know. And the worst thing that can happen is you lose time or money. And both of those things, are precious to an entrepreneur, as you know. So, that's what we fear we're going to lose, is time or money. And so, it's hard to build that trust and get that right vendor in place. But having somebody that you can go to, and the more you at least have base knowledge, like it sounds like you at least have base knowledge now, which helps you to select a good vendor. When you don't have good base knowledge is when you can get the runaround a little bit.
Yeah. And it's all about, now I know this, but it's all about testing, you know? So there's ways to go about having developers do a test for you, like creating something small on the platform, or, something like that, where my dad was like, oh yeah, let's just have them do a test. I'm like, no, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Like, I want to get it going,
Right.
And that was where I messed up.
Yeah.
And like I said, you learn from your mistakes. Somebody actually, I heard them say, they were like, when you start a business, it's probably going to take 3 times the amount of time and 3 times the amount of money.
Oh,
and
so
it's
true.
just, because I thought I was going to launch, X amount of time, X amount of money, and it was more than that. However, I will say this, if I knew that it was going to take 2 years and however much it cost, I would not have even started. So it's almost better not to know.
Right.
Just
going in blind is sometimes a blessing, right? Because then you start realizing, like, if somebody told me at the very beginning of starting a business that it was going to cost me relationships and, X amount of money and time and frustration, and people were going to stab me in the back and be like, oh, hell no, I'm not signing up for that. That sounds awful. But looking back, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love what I do. And
exactly.
Going into it, you don't want to know all the bad things that'll happen, but you certainly do want, the successes are well worth it. And that's the one thing that I think people need to know going into being an entrepreneur is, if you love what you do, it makes all the difference in, reviving that passion every single day, even through all the hardships.
Yeah, 100%. Like I was saying, I was pregnant and going through kind of this emotional roller coaster with my developers. And I told my husband, like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And like, he was my biggest cheerleader. He's like, listen,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like, I'm so grateful. But he's like, you just need to think of it as you are getting your MBA. Like, this is your MBA. You're learning on the job, essentially. And if you build this platform and it fails, you'll find a job anywhere, because you built a tech platform that failed.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's kind of how I started to look at it. Like, I am spending money to eventually build this incredible community for female founders. In the process, I'm learning so much of what to do, what not to do, and then using that knowledge to help other women try to grow their business. And like, help them get over hurdles that I've already been through.
Yeah.
And that's the best part is now I can look back and be like, okay, so I did this.
Yeah.
I did not. Or let me help you do this. Or let me hop on a call with you. If you're talking to a developer, like I would love to help you out. And if I don't know, let me text my developer and see if he can help out. So just being a resource for people, using what I've learned to benefit others.
That's awesome. That's such a gift. And people don't realize. And so this is what I love about, women who are in this entrepreneurial space is that the first thing we want to do is bring others up too, and so we really do. We are each other's biggest cheerleaders sometimes because it's like, okay, I did it. I figured it out. It didn't kill me. So let's figure out how to bring others up into that space. And it's, I think that there's not enough of it because there's not enough of us that say, okay, I figured this part out. I mastered this puzzle, or at least I've muddled my way through it, whether you mastered it or you muddled your way through it. And some days are different than others, right? Some days I feel like the master, some days I feel like I'm still figuring it out.
Sometimes in the same day.
Yes, exactly. But, having those moments where you're like, okay, I want somebody else to learn from this. I started coaching during the 2020 pandemic because, my business was kind of shut down. I'm like, well, guess I'll just sit here and wait for things to open back up again. And, unfortunately my business can't be remote. It's events. And so, but yeah, I found that, coaching was such a blessing because I just loved having that ability to share knowledge with people. I think that's it's such a gift. So congratulations on that. What a great pivot.
Thank you. Same for you. I read that in your bio, actually, that you started coaching. Like, wow, like, why would she not do that? You have so much experience. Like, such a great idea for you to do that.
Well, because I think when you're busy and you're in the weeds and what you're doing and everything is like busy, you're not coming up for air,
Right.
And so you haven't started figuring out like, it's only been, let's see, I just turned 46 this week. And so now you start thinking about, what do I want my legacy to be? Like, how do I want to be remembered? Like, I don't want to be remembered as working my ass off for 25 years. Like, I want to actually do something that contributes back to society besides working all the time. And so, and as an entrepreneur, it doesn't feel like work so much sometimes because you're in the weeds doing it. But I love that your whole platform just kind of revolves around, helping female founders figure out how to connect with their audience. So tell me about pivoting in your business and what that feels like and how is it scary? Is it exhilarating? Is it a little bit of everything? Tell me about pivoting.
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything. It almost feels like starting over, but not. So let me explain what I mean by that. So I started off as an influencer marketing platform. And as I was growing the platform and building, I realized that I didn't have people around me that I could lean on. Like I mentioned, it was during the pandemic. I was living with my parents and I didn't really know anybody else in the tech space. I wouldn't have made the mistakes I did if I had.
Right.
So I essentially wanted to create a community for again, people like myself, for women who needed the support, brainstorming, resources, just somebody to be like, wow, you're doing amazing. And I wanted to bring that aspect onto the platform as well. So I started to kind of build that out as I was, I think a month after I launched, I started to do that. Okay. And I started to, host monthly mastermind. So it was like a monthly 1.5 hour class where I would bring in an expert to teach something on business for 45 minutes. And then we would brainstorm, network, connect for the other 45 minutes. And people were building like actual friendships. It was incredible to see people's businesses growing and ideas flowing. And then I'm on Instagram and I see like 2 of the girls having coffee together. I'm like,
that's so awesome. Cool. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And they're like, yeah, we knew you would love this. I'm like, this is what it's all about. Like, I have the most incredible girlfriends in the world. They are not entrepreneurs. So when I launched, I felt like and nobody was like, I mean, my husband, was, of course, but nobody
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, Inbal, this is so cool. And it's nice to have that once in a while. Like, I root people on every single day because I'm so happy for them and so excited. It's nice to have it in return as well. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what made me start to like really incorporate the networking aspect, because I wanted people to cheer on, and I wanted them to cheer my platform on, and just to like love on each other.
Yes.
And so that monthly masterclass turned into weekly, which is what we do now. So it's a weekly masterclass every single week, and it's kind of changed and geared more towards marketing, since the marketing industry or marketing in general is just constantly changing. And there's so many aspects, from email to affiliate, influencer, branding, copy, storytelling, web design. I mean, you name it, it's changing. And everybody can learn from it, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or you're an influencer, or you've built, a $6 million app. You can benefit from learning new marketing tactics.
Oh, absolutely.
And so that's why I kind of shifted it from business in general to marketing. And then we do a co-working hour as well on Thursdays. So when I pivoted, it was like, okay, how do I pivot without like confusing people?
Right. Yeah.
So it's all about communication. I've always been very vocal on my Instagram stories about like, okay, hey, like, this is what I'm kind of thinking. What do you guys think of this? Doing polls, asking questions, getting advice, and then implementing. I've always been one of those people where if I have an idea, I will make it happen. It's not like, oh, when will I make it? It's like, I'm going to do it now.
Right. I love it. I love it.
So it's like before I can regret it type of thing. So when I shifted from the influencer marketing platform to incorporating the masterclasses, it was obviously like so well received. And then I'm like, I have all these brands and influencers on my website. Why not bring in service providers that can find clients from the brand perspective?
Right.
And it was kind of like full circle. So it's all about messaging. It's all about, really honing in on like your target market. And I mean, it was a lot of work. Like, you have to change the homepage, the copy, your email sequence.
Yeah.
It's not easy to pivot, but I think once you get through it, and in my case, documenting the changes and the process, kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. It helps other people that may take a little bit longer to implement things realize like, okay, I can do it,
Right.
And that's what our weekly meetings are all about. Like, you want to pivot? Let's talk about it. What's your problem? And there's, 5 to 10 people in the group that are like, oh my gosh, that's such a good idea. Or you should try this, or you should try this and market it like this. And that's the whole point. So we kind of shifted it that way. And then eventually I was like, I have a platform. It's essentially like Facebook. There's a community feed. There's a search feature. There's a message center. You can build out a profile. I'm like, I'm a social media platform. I'm not a community. It's a social media platform. No algorithms, no restrictions, inclusive 100%. There's a free option. There's a paid option. And so changing that messaging also was like, people were like, oh yeah, this makes so much more sense. So I think when you pivot in the right direction, people are like, okay, I see this.
Yeah. They can see the vision. Right.
Exactly.
And so when you're pivoting, I think one of the things that's really critical to pivoting well is timing. Right. So like getting the timing right, because sometimes we take too long and we get so entrenched in, there's a entrepreneur group that I belong to, and they always say, don't get married to your ideas, right? Because if you're completely, married to this idea, you have such a hard time thinking like, well, I've already invested this much into it. And even though, pivoting is the right thing, you feel like it would be a loss. And typically pivoting is not a loss. It's a gain, but it takes bravery and courage to like say, I can disconnect from what I thought this was going to be because this is where I see it going.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny you say that because I spent so much time and money building this platform,
Mm-hmm.
but the people that I was communicating with were more interested in the master classes. They
Oh,
weren't even
wow.
using the platform. And so that was kind of why I wanted to shift the verbiage and call it a social media platform, because
Mm-hmm.
then people will post more, they'll communicate more with each other, comment, because it's not just a community where the community really happens in the master classes. Social media is such a buzzword for people that want
Right.
to connect. And
Yes.
so once I kind of changed that,
Mm-hmm.
the focus was more towards the platform. And I also put where, as before, I was kind of sending out Zoom links via email. I created an events page on the platform. So people had to sign into the platform. They can access the events from the platform. They can access previous events, like everything is recorded on YouTube. And so it kind of forced people like to get on the platform.
Oh, that's awesome. Good strategy. I love it. I
Thanks.
love it. Well, very cool. So tell me a little bit more about who inspires you or what inspires you?
I think about this all the time. And I love kind of like the story that I said before when the two girls were having coffee together,
Yes.
connected. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm like early pregnancy, so I'm like very emotional right now.
Oh, congratulations.
Like super early. So, but I love making people's day better.
Yeah.
And if that means like they're super frustrated with their business going into like their morning coffee and then
Mm-hmm.
joining the masterclass and messaging me like, oh my gosh, Inbal, I have so much more clarity. Like that is what
Yes.
drives me. I
Yes.
love it so, so much. And when I see other people rooting people on or connecting or like two people on a podcast that, met through like-minded collective,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, I love it so, so, so much. And that's honestly what drives me.
Yeah.
I could say my girls, which I obviously want them to think I'm a badass.
Yes, of
um,
course.
but ultimately it's you sacrifice time sometimes with your children to build something that is very meaningful in order to make more time with your kids later.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know so yeah, my why is really just like in the intro you said, like I want women to know how incredible they are, to know that they matter, and to know that there's a place for them, whether they are aspiring entrepreneurs or have raised millions of dollars for their business. Like
Yeah,
we love everyone as long as you're
absolutely. Yay. I love that. That's so wonderful. I love it. I love it. Yes, I love women lifting other women up. I am such a fan of seeing women bring other women up with them and cheering them on and being their biggest supporters. I think there's just not enough of it. And I just, that's how we
Yeah.
get to where we're going to be is other women lifting women up. So,
Yeah, 100%. I was in a clubhouse room,
mhm,
and I'm a part of other female communities. Like I pay to be a part of other female communities because
mhm.
I think the more female communities you're in, the more you learn and the more
Yeah,
connections you make.
for sure.
So I was in a clubhouse room that my friend is a part of a different female community that I'm not a part of, but she was like, Inbal, come in this room. She like pulled me up on stage and I was introducing myself and I was kind of talking about like-minded collective, and somebody booted me off the stage.
Oh, no.
Yes. And I was like, okay, this is happening.
Yeah.
And so she brought me back on stage. And I finished what I was saying, but she messaged me and she was like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know who did that. That's so rude. It's not okay. And later on, like I launched my affiliate program officially next week, but I launched it this week. So I messaged her. I was like, hey, I don't know if it's a conflict of interest, but I would love to have you as an affiliate. She's such a supportive person and in the community. And she's like, I'm actually out of that community.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she's like, I know who did that to you. I'm all about, community and collaboration and no competition. And it was just like such a horrible community to be a part of. And
Mhm.
there's so many women in this world. There's so many women who are parts of multiple communities. Like, why do you have to compete and why do you have to be so catty? And
Mhm.
it speaks volumes to the type of, people who are in that community. So I'm glad that she stepped away, and I'm glad that there's incredible communities. Like I'm a part of a few. And there are incredible women out there.
Yeah.
Some just still need to learn a little bit.
Well, and I feel like there's still this this kind of like women can be threatened by other women. And I don't think, it makes me sad when I see that, because honestly, like we all bring so much to the table, and we only get bigger and better by supporting each other. If we're not getting that support from anywhere else, we at least need to provide it for each other. And so I hate seeing women hurt other women. And you do see it a lot, unfortunately, in the corporate world, especially climbing a corporate ladder. You'll see that where, a woman gets to this executive level and she sabotages women under her because she doesn't want competition, and it's not okay. It's just not okay. So as women, we often give our power away. So, in a situation like this, like what have you done? When have you given your power away, and when have you stepped into your power? And what was the difference between the two times? I mean, can you remember a time where you've given your power away? And it could be something as simple as, I didn't take credit for something that I built, or I didn't advance when I could have. And, tell me a time that you stepped into your power and what the difference was.
Oh my gosh. I've kind of always had a mouth on me.
I respect that.
But I will say that before I did, and that kind of started in college, in high school, it happened all the time. I got stepped on. I was bullied, and I didn't stand up for myself, in anything really. And I think once I hit college and I realized like, wow, like I will never let that happen to me again.
Right.
That's kind of where it's difficult for me to work for people because I have a hard time, how should I say it? Like taking bad leads. Like if I think that somebody is doing a bad job, like a manager or something, like I will step up and say it. And it's usually a guy, and I've gotten fired for insubordination. But
you and me both, sister. That has happened to me too.
Dude, I mean, I'm not surprised. I feel like powerful women are like that. Like if you're doing something wrong, I'm going to tell you, and I'm sorry.
Right. Right. Absolutely. 100%.
And so I think like that's when one of the first times that I actually like stepped into my power is like standing up for myself. And it's funny because I stood up to the owner. It was at a restaurant that I worked at. I stood up to the owner and I said, he's the one you should fire, not me. And I ended up getting fired.
Yeah.
But he ended up getting fired, and then they brought me back on as the general manager a couple years later.
Wow. Yes. Yeah. Well, I had a sales manager who we were going on a sales appointment, and he's like, "Don't worry about, you just sit there and look pretty, and I'll do all the talking." And I said, "You're such a effing douchebag."
I just can't believe people
apparently that wasn't okay.
Those words that come out of their mouth.
I know. So yeah. Gosh, I know. So what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Kind of like what we just said, like, don't let anybody take your power away.
Yes.
I think that's so powerful. And that's something that I'm definitely going to let, teach my girls, because this world can be cruel. But I think that when you're nice and you are positive, not too nice though, don't let people walk all over you. You'll get so far in this world. And I really truly believe that, in the sense of like, when you give more than you receive, you really actually receive so much more.
Absolutely.
So that's something I would also tell my younger self.
Awesome. And then last question, what do you wish more people knew?
Oh man. I wish that more people knew. That's a really good question. There's so many things that you can just message somebody and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
I think networking and like really building genuine relationships is so few and far between now that, when somebody messages you, you're like, oh my God, what do they want? But it shouldn't be that way. It should just be like, hey, like you're doing a great job. I actually started messaging people to kind of build relationships with them through my platform or on Instagram, and just telling them like, hey, I just found your Instagram and decided to follow you. I love your content. I think as women entrepreneurs, we need to give and, receive compliments once in a while. So keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome.
And it's just like, it's nice because you start to build that relationship. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not being like, they're like, oh, thank you. So nice to meet you. And I'm like, oh, hey, do you want to try my platform? Like, it's not how it works.
Right.
I'm just like genuinely interested in getting to know them. So I think more people knew that it's okay to just say hi and introduce yourself and give a compliment and just really try to build genuine relationships in your life, because that'll take you so much farther.
Yeah, I agree. There's not enough of that. Like I see messages on my LinkedIn and I always cringe. I'm like, okay, what sales pitch is this? But it's like, it's so nice when somebody just reaches out to say, hey, you're crushing it. Keep going. That's the best message. And it's like, if you want to open up lines of communication, send a message like that,
Yeah, I know.
So different.
Sent me like, what's your favorite color? I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Where is this going? And I said, I don't have one. And she's like, oh, usually we find that entrepreneurs' favorite color is green because of money. I'm like, oh God.
Oh gosh.
And then she went into her sales pitch. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I get it. Well, that's so awesome. Well, so happy that we got a chance to talk today. I really enjoyed our conversation. I think you are definitely going to inspire a lot of people. And, and the fact that you're juggling the mom and the CEO and, 2 different businesses and pivoting your platform and technology. I just love your courage in doing it all. So I am so proud of you. Great job on all of it. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And if anybody is listening, wants to check out the platform, just send a message on Instagram and I'll give you a free month to try it out.
Awesome. And tell us what the platform is again, so everybody hears it.
likemindedcollective.com. So on Instagram, it's like.minded.collective. I run my social media, so I'll answer all emails, DMs, all that good stuff. So definitely reach out, even just to say hi.
Very cool. Thank you so much. So that is it for us today. I am so grateful for your time, Inbal Claudio, and please do check her out on Like Minded Collective. And we look forward to seeing all the cool things that you're doing in the future. So please like, subscribe, and check us out later on future episodes of prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time. And until then, step into your own power.